Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Light Domain Cleric. Now the Light Domain is actually one of my favorite cleric subtypes, and I think the reason for this is because you have a lot more damage type options. Now for anyone who's watched my channel a lot, I'm not a big fan of direct damage necessarily. I tend to like more control type spells. But clerics are one that can often feel like they're a boring class to play because you kind of get stereotyped into this healing, support, buff type of character. And while I personally enjoy those kind of characters, a lot of people don't. And so the fact that you can still do that role but also bring some direct damage to the mix just gives you a lot more options. It makes the class a lot more fun to play. And you don't feel like you're being forced down a certain path. You've got a lot more options, and options are just fun for everyone. So I think that's one of the things the Light Domain really kind of stands out from a lot of the other cleric domains. So I want to start by talking about the cleric domain spell list. Especially in the case of the Light Domain, I think that it's a pretty decent list overall. When I'm looking at a domain spell list, there's generally two different things I'm looking for. Number one are good spells that I was going to have to prepare anyways, and now I don't have to because they're going to count as being always prepared. And this could be either things like the Life Domain is actually an excellent example of this. You're still a cleric, you're going to have some heal spells. The fact that if you're a Life Domain, a lot of those spells are on your domain list means that now you can start preparing other things, maybe more circumstantial ones, where you can't always use them all the time, but they're really good, but it's hard to justify it when you need spots for things like Healing Word. And as a Life Domain, you don't have to worry about that. The other one that I'm looking for is excellent spells from other spell lists that I wouldn't normally have access to. The Trickery Domain Cleric is an excellent example of this. In fact, the Trickery Domain spell list is probably the best, and it's really what saves that domain, in my opinion, and makes it a pretty decent domain, because a lot of their abilities aren't so great. But the ability to add things like Mirror Image and Polymorph and things like that, which you wouldn't normally have access to, really makes the Cleric domain for Trickery a pretty good spell list. So with Light, I wouldn't say it's as good as Trickery's, but it is pretty decent. So let's go over the spells really quickly. At level 1, you're going to have access to Burning Hands and Fairy Fire. Burning Hands is a spell that's really nice at low levels because you don't have a lot of AoEs. I don't like it at higher levels. It's one I'm not going to use past probably level 2 or 3, honestly. But for those first couple levels, which tend to be some of the most dangerous, it at least gives you an AoE option. It's not the worst thing ever. Fairy Fire, on the other hand, is an excellent spell that even at high levels, you might want to throw down a Fairy Fire. There's nothing wrong with that. It is an excellent spell, and especially if you have teammates that are doing a lot of damage that really benefit from advantage, then being able to throw down an AoE that's going to give, advantage to all your allies is an amazing ability. It's one of the real standouts on this spell list. At level 3, you have Flaming Sphere and Scorching Ray. Flaming Sphere isn't a bad spell. I just don't like it for Cleric because it's going to use your bonus action to use it effectively, and you've already got access to Spiritual Weapon at this point, which is just a much better use of your bonus action. So if you're going to use a spell slot, and that spell slot is going to be requiring you to use a lot of bonus actions all the time, you might as well just use Spiritual Weapon instead. I think it's much better. Scorching Ray, again, at level 3, is a pretty good spell. It doesn't scale particularly well. You're not going to want to use it past level 4 or so. Level 5, you get access to Daylight. Circumstantial, but really good when those circumstances arrive. And Fireball. Now, as much as I might complain about direct damage spells sometimes, I always point out that Fireball is a clear exception to that rule. Fireball is an amazing spell that can just one-shot an entire encounter at level 5. And even at higher levels, it still remains a pretty decent spell. There's always a use for AoE minion clearing or whatever else you need it for. So the fact that you actually get access to that is awesome. Level 7, you're going to get Guardian Faith, pretty good spell. Wall of Fire, not bad. As far as walls go, it's not really a wall, which can be very frustrating because it doesn't separate things the way you actually want with like a wall of stone or a wall of force, for example. But it does some pretty good damage, and there are some pretty abusive combinations you can use. Like if you had, say, a warlock with repelling blast, you can wall of fire a bunch of enemies, and after they come towards you, the warlock can just keep repelling blast and push them back into the wall of fire again to keep doing more and more damage. It can get pretty abusive sometimes, and I suggest that you abuse the heck out of them. So, anyways, it's not a bad spell. I'd actually say it's a pretty good spell as far as damage spells go. The fact that it's persistent is quite nice. So, at level 9, you're going to get Flame Strike and Scrying. Scrying's, again, circumstantial, but very nice when you need those circumstances. Flame Strike is, honestly, it's just a terrible spell. It's one that I wouldn't have taken on a cleric, even if I did want more damage. And I know that some people are always like, yeah, but half the damage is radiant, and half of it is fire, so if something's resistant or immune to fire, you can still hit it with a Flame Strike. But honestly, like if something's immune to fire, and half the damage is fire, I'm not going to use something that's only doing half damage, and then they get a saving throw. They might end up taking quarter damage from a 5th level spell slot. It's awful in my opinion. But you have Fireball, so you don't need it. So just ignore Flame Strike the way you should always ignore it if you're a cleric, in my opinion. It's actually disappointing because back in the day, Flame Strike was a really decent spell for clerics. For a class that didn't have a lot of damage options, Flame Strike was kind of what you took. But, these days Flame Strike is pretty awful. If it was just all radiant damage, I think it would be decent. If it was all fire damage, it would still be okay because at least you could, maybe circumstantially use it on something you knew was vulnerable to fire. But, as it is, it's not a great spell. But, whatever. It's only one spell. Don't cast it. As far as the actual class abilities from the domain, level 1, because you're a cleric, you get to choose your domain at level 1. You're going to get the Light cantrip for free. This is pretty nice. I mean, Light's not a game breaker by any means, but it's one that I always feel obligated to take anyways. Even if I have dark vision, I always assume there's going to be someone in the party who doesn't. There's either a human or a halfling or a dragonborn, whatever. There's always someone who can't see in the dark, and so I always feel obligated to take Light anyways. And now I don't have to. It just frees me up to take a different cantrip. So that's kind of okay. Nothing wrong with that. You're also going to get Warding Flare at level 1. And honestly, this is one of the best abilities I think that the Light Cleric gets. And you're getting it at first level, which is awesome. You can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on an attack against you if the attacker is within 30 feet. It doesn't affect them if they can't be blinded. So there are some restrictions. But overall, it's pretty good. You can use it a number of times equal to your wisdom mod before you have to take a long rest. So, you're looking at probably 3 to 5 times. That's pretty good. You're going to get a lot of mileage out of this because, you're always going to be getting attacked. Even more importantly, though, the reason I like this so much is because you're going to be able to have an easier time maintaining concentration on key spells. If you have like a Spirit Guardians going or a Bless spell or something like that, you don't want to be getting hit a lot and losing concentration on it. So the fact that you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on the attack just means you're going to be getting hit less, you're going to be able to make fewer concentration saves, you're not going to have to worry quite as much about, losing those key spells. There's nothing worse than throwing down a Spirit Guardians and then getting immediately hit, losing the spell, and basically doing nothing with it, That sucks. So, now it's one less concern that you're really going to have to worry about. At level 2, you get Radiance of the Dawn. This is a AoE damage spell, a nuke type. It does not have friendly fire, which is very nice, so it only affects hostile creatures within 30 feet of you. It's a Constitution saving throw, which isn't the best usually, but at low levels, a lot of things you're going to fight don't have great con, like goblins and kobolds and stuff like that, tend to be more dex based than con based. So at level 2, it's actually pretty good. And it does quite a bit of damage at low levels. 2d10 plus your cleric level, save for half, is pretty reasonable damage. Especially at level 2 when, like, wizards don't even have access to shatter, for example, you know? And things like burning hands do friendly fire. So, you know, you gotta be careful when you use it. You might hit your rogue or warrior or whatever, or fighter, I should say, or whatever else you have. Whereas this, you don't have to worry about that. It's a radius, which can be pretty nice. And there is a bit of scaling, but it's pretty slow, right? 1 per cleric level, and they gotta save for half. So, I mean, if you're a level 20 cleric, you're doing 2d10 plus 20. That sounds okay, but if you're a level 2 cleric, you're doing 2d10 plus 2. You know, so for 18 levels of progression, that's not a lot more damage. So I wouldn't say you're going to be using this a lot at higher levels, and it is your channel divinity ability, so it's not like you've got like just unlimited uses of it anyways. But I think it's really good at low levels, and it also fulfills one thing that I'm looking for in a channel divinity, which is something that I can use a lot. Because your other option with channel divinity is turn undead. Now, turn undead is obviously what you're going to do if you're fighting undead. That's going to be way better than using this. But it's only good when you're fighting undead. So it's an amazing ability, but it's also circumstantial. So when I'm looking at a channel divinity for any of my cleric subtypes, I want something I can use all the time. Because I've already got turn undead as a circumstantial ability. I don't want another ability, like, let's say it's only usable on outsiders, like fiends, fae, and celestials. And then you've already got turn undead, which is only on undead. Now you've got 2 circumstantial channel divinities, which you're almost never going to be able to use very well. I don't want that. Instead, you've got this, which is just an AoE nuke. It's going to be good all the time. So that's what I'm looking for in my channel divinity. And it's this pretty strong one, like I said, especially at lower levels. It's very good. So at level 6, you're going to get improved flare. This is basically just your warding flare, except now you can use it on someone else. And it's pretty good. You know, you're taking what was already a really good ability at level 1, and now you're just making it better by being able to use it on someone else. However, that being said, I'm still going to be looking to use it on myself first and foremost. Because like I said earlier, I want to be able to maintain concentration on my key spells. Now, maybe the fact that I can use it on the party's wizard or sorcerer or someone like that and help them maintain concentration on like a polymorph or something else, that makes this ability even better. But in general, I'm probably going to be my own primary target. And I'm not saying, you know, there's going to be times where the paladin gets hit twice in one round and gets crit, and now she's at 2 hit points and she's already acted, so she can't lay hands, and you're acting last because you rolled a 1 on your initiative, and you're just like, you know what, somebody else has attacked the paladin, maybe I should impose disadvantage just so I don't have to worry about her going down. You know, nothing wrong with that. It's great for those circumstances too. But in general, let's say 70% of the time, I'm probably still going to be reserving it to use it on myself, unless there's, you know, dire circumstances otherwise. Now, at level 8, I'm going to get potent spellcasting. So basically for clerics, I'm sure most of you have noticed, there's one of 2 things you're going to get at level 8. You're either going to get damage type added to your melee attacks, which is what, you know, like Tempest and War and Life and a bunch of other ones get, or you're going to get damage added to your cantrips, which is going to be equal to your wisdom bonus. So generally, that's going to tell you what you want to be, either a melee cleric or a casting cleric. Not always. I still like to cast with life clerics. I don't know why I want my healer being on the front line all the time. I mean, even if I am in plate armor, you know, I might still want to just spam people with cantrips sometimes. And in general, that's what I prefer from a cleric anyways. Not saying you can't build some combinations around melee strikes. You can, and some of those can be very effective. But if I'm just looking to play more of a blaster, support, healer, buffer, debuffer, generalist caster role, I'm just going to be casting anyways. So the fact that I can add my wisdom bonus to like a Sacred Flame or a Toll the Dead or whatever, in my opinion, is just going to be better. That's what I'm looking for on this character anyways, and that's what I'm getting. And your wisdom bonus is actually a pretty big advantage. Like, let's take Sacred Flame, for example, just because I think it's more thematic for a light cleric than Toll the Dead. If you're using Sacred Flame and you're level 8, you're only doing 2 to 8 damage on a Sacred Flame. So the fact that you can add an extra 5 on top of that, that's basically an extra dice of damage. It's actually slightly better than an extra die, in fact. So, that's 1.5 times as much. Even at level 17, when you're doing 4 die 8, just doing an extra 5 damage on top of it is pretty solid. It helps you get a lot more mileage out of it. So, I like potent spell casting. It's really good in general, and I think it's particularly good on a cleric where you don't want to necessarily be up in melee range. You don't have heavy armor on a light cleric. You're stuck with medium armor, maybe you got a shield. It's not that you can't be in melee range, but that's not really where you're looking to live, So, in general, I'd like potent spell casting on this character, and that's what I've got. Level 17, you're going to get Corona of Light. This is a really nice ability, but it does require some setup. So, what does it do? You're going to be able to throw bright light within 60 feet, dim light 30 feet beyond that, so 90 feet total, not bad. And everybody, or all hostiles, inside that area are going to have disadvantage on saving throws against fire damage and radiant damage, which, let's be fair, are the 2 main damage types you're going to be doing. So the fact that you can give everybody in that range disadvantage is quite nice. The disadvantage is that it takes your action to use. So like I said, it does require some setup. You can't just throw it down and then immediately fireball everybody, because, it's going to take your action, and then fireball is going to take your action. But if you have, say, a wizard in your party who's also looking to fireball, then you could do this, and then he can fireball, and they're all going to have disadvantage on the saving throw. So there is a lot of potential teamwork. It's not just your fire and radiant damage. It's just all fire and radiant damage. So there is combinations there that are pretty good. And in a longer fight, something like this can really start to shine. Let's say you're in a big fight and this is going to take 5, 6, 7, 10 rounds of combat, whatever it's going to be. Then throwing this down in the first round can be very nice. Even if you just end up throwing down like this in the first round, and then you start throwing down things like Sacred Flames round after round, it's still going to be giving them disadvantage on the saving throws. So, there's a lot of potential here. Again, is it the best level 17 cleric ability out there? No. Looking at you, Arcana Cleric, you've got that so wrapped up easily. But it is pretty good. And in a longer fight where it really starts to shine, it can really start to pay off. The fact that your teammates can take advantage of it as well just gives it a lot more mileage. It's a huge area of effect, which I really like, which means you're going to be able to hit a lot of things with it. So it's pretty good overall. So I want to talk a little bit about feats. In general, when you're looking at a caster who might still want to maintain concentration on spells, I always talk about Warcaster, which I still think is excellent on this character. But I might favor Resilient Con a little bit more, because you've already got Warding Flare, and unlike, say, like a War Cleric, for example, who's probably going to be looking to be in melee a lot, might want to use a shield for more armor class and wielding a weapon. You don't have to use a weapon. You're going to be using potent spellcasting a lot, probably. You're going to be using your spells a lot. So you're probably going to have one free hand anyways. Even if you're just wearing medium armor and a shield, you don't have to use a weapon, which means that Warcaster isn't as big a deal. I'm not saying don't take it, though. Warcaster is still an amazing feat. It's one that I'm going to always recommend on any caster. But I do think Resilient Con might be slightly better here, whereas Warcaster is the one I usually consider to be the slightly better of the two. Another feat that I really like here is the Healer feat. And the reason is because I might not want to have a lot of healing spells prepared, but I'm still going to be expected to be able to heal people because I am still the party cleric. And I'm not saying don't take Healing Word or anything like that. Healing Word is still excellent. You're going to want that. But it allows you to use like healing kits and to bring people up. Instead of just stabilizing them, you can actually put them back to 1 hit point again. So that makes it a pretty decent option, especially if you have something like let's say you've got a spiritual weapon already going, and you might want to just be able to I'd rather just attack with my spiritual weapon and use my healer kit to bring the fighter back up, rather than using my action to cast cure wounds or to use my bonus action and cast a healing word, and then I can't use spiritual weapon to attack. It gives you more options, and it means you don't necessarily have to have a lot of healing spells prepared. You could probably just have healing word and this feat, and you might be good to go. So I think that's kind of interesting. At least gives you some more options there, and it's one that I think is decent. So I usually talk a lot about multi-classing. I don't really have a lot of multi-classing suggestions for this particular build. I'm sure that if we got really creative, you could probably take like a sorcerer. There we go with the dragon blood line, and maybe add some like fire damage or something like that. I'm sure we could probably get creative. The problem is though that clerics use wisdom, and there's just not a lot of other classes that use wisdom. I'm probably not looking to be a melee character and combine it with ranger. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get my high level spell slots, and there's just more effective melee builds I could make if I wanted to combine cleric with something like a ranger. I'm probably not looking to multi-class with druid. If I was going to do that, I'd probably go with like nature would be a decent mix with druid and some of the other ones along those lines. You could just take like a level or two of fighter or paladin if you wanted heavy armor for those reasons. You could grab like 2 levels of paladin and grab some smites or whatnot. But in general, I'm probably just going to want to play this character as a straight cleric all the way through. Don't worry, I will have some great videos for cleric multi-classing in the future though. I just don't know that light cleric is the one I'm really looking for. The other thing is that if I'm dipping into light cleric as a multi-class, other than warding flare, I don't really know what I'd be looking to get, and I just think there's better cleric subclasses out there if I'm looking to just dip for something. Like War Cleric, Tempest Cleric, Life Cleric, those are all going to be able to give me heavy armor, so if I started as something that can't wear heavy armor, instead of multi-classing into like a fighter and still not getting heavy armor, I could just take 1 level of War Cleric, get heavy armor as a bonus proficiency, and then be able to add, like plus 10 to an attack roll if I want, or 2 levels of War Cleric, and being able to use bonus attacks and stuff like that. I think that in those cases you're adding a lot more. I don't know that light cleric is, but maybe I'm wrong. I probably just haven't looked at it close enough, and that's my own fault, right? But anyways, those are my thoughts on the light domain. It is one of my favorite cleric subdomains, so like I said, that's mostly based on the strength of some of its lower level abilities and the strength of its spell list. I think it's really good. And even at higher levels, it's still pretty good. Clerics in general, I find, start to really kind of taper up at higher levels, whereas say wizards, for example, just become even better at higher levels. So that's just kind of the natural progression of both classes, I think. I feel like clerics are much stronger at low levels than wizards. Wizards are stronger at high levels. That's generally because the wizard spell list is so good at high levels, and the cleric spell list isn't quite as good, but it's still quite excellent. So anyways, those are my thoughts on the class. Feel free to leave your comments, like, subscribe, all that stuff. But like I said, most of the comments, I love reading people's feedback. I love reading their suggestions or just their own playing experiences. Like, hey, I played a cleric and this circumstance happened. I love reading that kind of stuff. It's just kind of fun for me, and it's always giving me ideas for new videos. So more than anything else, I love seeing people leave comments in the comment section. I promise to read every comment, and I'll probably respond to a good many of them. So anyways, that's all I have. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.